Boom. Hey, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you're at. Welcome back to episode 3 of the In the Pocket podcast. I am your host, SOU to the P, here with my brother, Big Mike. What's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on, man? Definitely excited about episode 3. We're getting better and better. Sorry about that lag from last week, but we got a new device, so we're good now.
Yeah, look, that's we heard the feedback. We didn't want no static with y'all, so Mike went and got some new equipment. So this week should run a lot smoother. Um, now that we've gotten through the bulk of the offseason, right? We're talking free agency, the draft, all the exciting part, right? This is the least fun part of the season because it's just waiting and waiting and speculation and bad narratives. So today we're gonna go through just a few news items. But I really want to get your take on some of these narratives that are already being perpetuated, whether we should hit the gas on these narratives or maybe pump the brakes a little bit. But just to start it off from the top, man, some people got paid over the weekend.
Absolutely.
Right? I want to start with George Kittle, 4 years, $76.4 million. Now, keep in mind, guys, George Kittle plays for San Francisco 49ers. He'll be 31 years old this year. I don't think it's going to be a straight 4 years. I think this is an extension to an already existing contract that, if I'm not mistaken, it'll take him out basically another 2 years, but it's a 4-year thing. They've got dead years on the contract, so that way they can get out of it. But Mike, what do you think about this deal? Are you paying $76.4 million for George Kittle at this point in his career?
Yeah, man. And I think the thing with George Kittle specifically is he has a unique skill set where he's not just great when it comes to receiving. Like, he's obviously a top 5 tight end of all time, but he's pretty much like a 6th lineman, right? So if you really think about this as somebody who's a receiver and a lineman, you're paying him less than $20 million a year. He's still an impact player. Obviously, he's had his injuries, but blocking doesn't really go away, and he loves to block. And we know in Mike Shanahan's office, that's a huge thing. So again, I thought they might have, re-signed him at a little bit less, but I'm not hating on it because that dude's a do-it-all player, and it definitely makes a big difference when he's playing than when he's not.
For sure. Another guy who got a bit of a bag over the weekend, Andrew Van Ginkel, 1 year, $23 million. Now, listen, don't tempt me with a good time, man. You give me $23 million for 1 year, there's a couple of things in my life that are going to change, and namely me clocking into a job every single morning. But I like Van Ginkel. I liked him when he was down in Miami. I thought he fit well into Flores' defense up in Minnesota. What's your thoughts there on that? I think it's a little definitely it's on the pricey side, but when you see what these edge rushers and outside linebackers are getting paid, I think this is kind of par for the course now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a little surprised at the amount of a bag he got, but at the same time, it's only 1 year. He's definitely somebody we see start off as a special teamer, worked his way into a starting role, a phenomenal pass rusher. So definitely dope, man. Shout out to him getting his bag, and he's consistently been an energizer battery on every team he's been on. He's rushing the passer, creating havoc in backfield. So definitely shout out to him, and I think that's going to do nothing but good for them.
Yeah, man, I like the move. I'm glad that he's earned his way, man. I think the next thing, man, I wanted to talk about, because we didn't really touch on it last episode. We just kind of did a recap of kind of what everybody did in the draft and what we thought about it. But there was an expensive prank that was going on, and most notably, right, the prank phone call to Shedeur Sanders. It's been reported out now that several other prospective college prospects were, they were getting prank called as well. But the culprit turned out to be defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, his Jeff Ulbricht's son. The NFL didn't take kindly to that prank. They didn't find it was funny, and they ended up finding the Atlanta Falcons $250,000. And then to make a point, they also fined defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbricht $100,000 on top of that. That's a very, very expensive prank, and I can tell you right now, that kid is on a very, very short leash. I think he's like 21, 22. So it's not like you can't even blame him and be like, oh, yeah, he's just a little kid. He ain't no better. It's like, you're 21, 22. Like, brother, you're gonna have to pay that back to me. I don't know. I'd be furious because he's a defensive coordinator, and I'm not saying that he's broke, but at the same time, 100,000 is something to a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, I mean, we know he was an interim, so I think he got a little bit of a bump when he was with the Jets, kind of finishing out that last season. But $100,000 as a coordinator, I don't care if you're a head coach making $5 million a year. That's still a lot of money, man. That's a bag is a bag. That's 2 to 4% of your salary as a head coach making that. As a defensive coordinator, I'm not exactly sure what he's making, man, but that's definitely an expensive break. And one of the things you said is like, I hate people like this kid. He's the same age as a lot of these guys getting drafted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they hold them to a whole different level of scrutiny from anything they've done at any point in their life, from high school on. So I think he can have that same accountability, man. But I'm sure him and his dad had a good conversation. The Falcons getting fined $250 is not really much for them, but at the same time, it lets them know you got to make sure you're changing your practices, make sure things are secure, and making sure you're not just leaving contact information from draft prospects out, obviously. And Shador obviously wasn't the only one that had this happen to him, but he's the only one where they kind of he was the most notable, and he was the only one where they kind of figured out where it came from. So I hope that these guys have some empathy, man. These guys are looking up to get drafted. They've been working towards that their entire life. Get a prank call, and some of those guys that got that prank call actually went undrafted. So hopefully that's something they can get corrected, and that information ain't floated out there. But I think that punishment definitely fits the crime for sure.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, I was actually pretty happy that the NFL stepped in and they did something, and they didn't just sweep this under the rug, and they did get a punishment. Because I've seen a lot of arguments to the contrary, right? That the punishment seemed excessive, especially penalizing Jeff Ulbrich. And it's like, bro, that stuff is secure information. It's private info. You can't just have that stuff out and exposed for anybody to get it, right? Like it was your son, but like it had it been somebody else, like there have to be a more secure chain of command for these documents and these items. And I also think this is going to spur the NFL to consider how they do the draft going forward in terms of getting in touch with these prospects and stuff, because I think you don't need to release a list of all of this stuff. Like we have GMs and stuff for a reason. Like why can't you send in a prospect that you're selecting, right? And then the NFL office, because you got to submit it to the NFL office with all the tech that we have. Why can't they send you the contact number that they have on file? That way, it's going straight from the NFL office to wherever your war room is at. So I'm curious to see what those changes are going to be for next year.
Or if they make a change,
If they make a change, yeah. Well, I guarantee you if there's more prank calls next year, that will be the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And not so exciting news, kind of a sad story. Second-year quarterback Jordan Travis, formerly of the Florida State Seminoles, he is retiring after the advice of his doctors. You guys know that for those of you that follow college football, Jordan Travis suffered a major injury to his leg in his final year at Florida State. Due to that, he was unable to play in their bowl game and stuff like that. They had hoped that he would be able to get back on his feet, maybe even get a crack at the roster, especially with this new Jets team. They have the new regime and stuff like that, where only Justin Fields was really on the roster for him to beat out. So you thought that he might get a chance to really live out his NFL dream. But on the advice of, medical professionals and stuff, he's decided to hang it up and call it a career, man. And I think it's just sad because it's something that these guys work for their entire life, right? They're talking Pop Warner, Youth Football League. Some of them have some of these more competitive traveling football teams. You get to high school and you work your way all through college. Like it's all for this moment. And then it's gone and you haven't really done anything meaningful. Like, sure, he got drafted in the late round, but like the guy hasn't seen the grass.
Right. Yeah, no. And I mean, definitely shout out to him, man. Like that's having to have your dream ended before it really started. And shout out to them for even like, they're still helping him out with some of the medical things, but he did have a compound fracture in his fibula and tibia, had some ankle breaks. So it's similar, it sounded like to that Alex Smith injury rather. Mm-hmm. And except for he wasn't maybe able to heal as quickly and he had a little bit of a setback in rehab. So the good news is he did graduate from college, so he did get his degree. Yep. So hopefully, he can use that and hop into a career or maybe even stay around football in some capacity, whether it's coaching, commentating, college football, something good. He's definitely a legend down in Florida State, that Tallahassee area. So definitely well wishes to him and hoping that he heals quickly and maybe that, something turns around, he gets another shot, NFL, CFL, something like that, man. But that would have been a great backup to Justin Fields to have a similar play style. It is unfortunate he did retire, but man, I'm glad he got his degree and he can at least, move into the next phase of his career.
For sure, man. Only well wishes to Jordan Travis and whatever the next chapter of his life is looking like. All right. So enough with the sad news. Man, we got three, I think, I want to say high profile free agent slash almost a free agent. And I wanted to pick your brain, Mike, and get where you think are the best possible fits. Give me two landing spots for each one of these guys. The first one that we're going to discuss is Aaron Rodgers, right? Like, I know everybody's tired of hearing about Aaron Rodgers, but he's still viable. He hasn't announced his retirement yet. So where do you think are the best two realistic options where you can see Aaron Rodgers go this year?
Yeah, the number one option I would say is Pittsburgh. Obviously, like they didn't really. I mean, they got Will Howard later on, who I think could potentially develop into a starter down the road, but that's not an immediate starter. And the other quarterback they have in their room, I don't think you want to go into that with that quarterback room. That's arguably the worst quarterback room in the league right now. So I feel like they had to have some assurances from Aaron Rodgers or something, like he's taking care of some family issues, some things like that he was saying, and that one is the most glaring. The second one, and this might seem like a cop-out answer, is every time training camp happens, preseason happens, there's always an injury. So I'm wondering if he's just waiting back to see if like a contender has an injury, maybe somebody doesn't bounce back. Obviously, he was tied to Minnesota for a little bit, but they moved forward with J.J. McCarthy. He was tied to – he thought he had the potential to come back to New York, and he said he flew across the country for them to tell him that he got cut. So I'm wondering, potentially with the Giants, depending on what happens with that room with Russ.
They have 50 million quarterbacks.
Yeah, I mean, they have Jackson Dart's not going to be ready this year, but if something happens where Russ doesn't work out, we know Jameis isn't a guy that you want necessarily starting a bunch of games because he'll have a game where he has 5 touchdowns and he'll have a game where he has 1 touchdown and 5 interceptions. So I think he might just wait on maybe a potential injury to happen. We saw a lot of starter quarterbacks go out last year. Brock Purdy dealt with some injuries last year. We know his offseason homes in California, et cetera. So if I had to pick one, obviously Pittsburgh, and number 2 would be whatever team deals with an inevitable injury that's going to happen. And he can kind of come in. He's been around the league long enough that he can step in with a contender and, be better than any backup that they would have right now.
I'm going to sit here and I'm going to agree with you on Pittsburgh as one of the likely landing spots. I think most people that have been paying half of attention to Aaron Rodgers' cycle this time, I think everybody's pretty much in agreement. Pittsburgh makes the most sense. It's probably the most likely destination. But I'm going to throw this one in there too. I actually think the New Orleans Saints would be interested in getting into the Aaron Rodgers business because we don't know what the heck is going on with Derek Carr right now. And I think the front office, regardless of them taking Tyler Show in the 3rd round, I would not feel comfortable going into the season with that current quarterback room the way that it is.
Yeah, him and Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, it's not something that I want to willingly walk into. And if you told me that there was a way that I could get Aaron Rodgers on a very team-friendly deal, right, because their cap is all over the place. We talked about this I think on the first episode, right, where the Saints they're an aging roster. I think he kind of fits right in with that, right? And he's somebody that Tyler Show can learn the position under, even if it's only for a year, right? That way you're not putting pressure on Tyler Show to come in and start right away. And I get it. Tyler Show is not like a spring chicken in terms of NFL quarterback shelf life. I think he's 25, maybe turning 26 this year. So he's already up there in what we would consider to be prime years. But again, anytime you're making that jump from the college level to the NFL, I think it's always good at the quarterback position for you to be able to sit at least a year. And regardless, again, whatever people personally feel about Aaron, he still plays the position at a really, really high level. I think it'd be good for Tyler to sit behind him and learn. So I love the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Let's work it backwards, man. Amari Cooper was a name that I thought would come off the free agent board a lot sooner. He still hasn't. And I think he demonstrated in stops in Cleveland and not so much in Buffalo because of the way that they utilized him. But I think he demonstrated he still has some juice left in the tank. Where are some spots that you could see him ended up?
Yeah, one immediately that came to mind was the Titans, right? The Tennessee Titans having
Mm-hmm.
a receiver like that. And really, you can't have enough weapons. We see they're rebuilding the offense. They rebuilt that running back room. They added a few more receivers. Xavier Restrepo, shout out UDFA from the U, baby. But I think that's a room he could go into, be a productive chain mover, probably go for 1,000 yards. He hasn't really started a full season for a while, but that's one. And one that would really make sense, in my opinion, because I don't think they address receiver at all, is the Dallas Cowboys.
Mm.
Opposite, he was there previously, et cetera. So I don't know how him and the Jones relationship may be at this point, but they still need another weapon, man. They didn't really address that. And you can't just have CD out there again. Their running back room, I really think their running back room is a little underrated, but they still need help in the tight end space. They still need some receiver help. Tax-free income, so he can take a little bit less money to go down there. And the Cowboys, actually, I was looking at cap space. They have $34 million in cap room still. Before they sign their rookie class, and even after they sign their rookie class, that's only projected to be about 15-ish, 12-ish million dollars. So they have the cap room to fit him in. They have that need. He can help bring along some of those younger receivers that they inevitably have to make. And I think that's probably a good spot for some UDFAs to actually make a roster, because they don't really have many weapons at that spot.
Yeah, Dallas Cowboys was definitely something that I hadn't thought about, but now that you've made all of those points, I was like, yeah, that makes a total sense for him to go back. I'm gonna also say, since we're talking about reunions there, I also think it would make sense for him to eventually end back up in Vegas with the Raiders again, kind of finish his career out where it started. And I think they would be getting the better version of Amari Cooper at this point in time, somebody who has way better hands than the last time that he wore the silver and black. Again, he's not going to take the top off, but he's reliable when you need to move the sticks, when you just need to make a play. I think Amari Cooper definitely in Cleveland has shown that he can do that. And Geno Smith is a better quarterback than what he's had thrown to him during his time in Cleveland. So I like the fit there. And I know that Vegas added some receivers in the draft. But again, these are young guys that are transitioning to the league. We don't know if their performance in college is going to translate to their performance in the NFL. It doesn't always work out that way. But with Amari Cooper, he's a known commodity. You're not going to have to give him a whole bunch of money. He's 30 years old this year. I think you can get him for relatively cheap for at least a year or two, and he brings a veteran presence to that young locker room.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think the Raiders receiver room is maybe a little bit underrated, but a portion of that is obviously projected some of these rookies.
Mm-hmm.
But Jacoby Myers, man, has been a move the chains kind of guy. They got him still there. So the two tight ends that they had, they arguably have the best tight end room in the NFL. They added to that running back room. Unfortunately, I get to see one of my favorite college players, Genty, run against the Broncos twice a year. But I think that could be a good final piece for them, man. But their receiver room isn't bad.
Yeah.
But that would absolutely elevate their room for sure.
Yeah, I just think about the kind of receivers that Geno is used to throwing to in Seattle, and I'm looking at that Raiders receiving room, and they don't really have like a big body, true wide receiver, and I think Amari kind of fits that mold. And no, don't get me wrong, I get it. They have Brock Bowers, and when you have Brock Bowers, do you really need a big body receiver? I would still say yes. I think it's just a level of comfortability right there for Geno. It's not a need. Like you said, I think the receiver room is underrated, but I can see him fitting there. Last but not least, this person is not a free agent, but I think both sides in this equation have made it clear that they no longer want to be tied together and they don't want to be in business together anymore. And that's the Miami Dolphins and Jalen Ramsey. Where are the two locations that you could see Jalen Ramsey go to possibly end his career?
Yeah, one and some of the stuff I was reading actually today is there's a very high likelihood he'll get traded like after June 1st, June 1 or after. That would actually save the Dolphins about $6 million of cap room this year. They would save the cash, but it would be $13 million against the cap if he's traded before that. So again, I'm not all about reunions necessarily, but the biggest one for me, your team, man, the Rams, they did not address a corner early at all. And Jalen Ramsey obviously has some continuity with that team. I know the trade out of there wasn't the prettiest thing necessarily, or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, I think that's a place as they add into that defense, man, they have a phenomenal front seven. They really do need one corner, I think, to kind of elevate their game. And a place that I think could potentially be underrated. Actually, I'm not even going to say that one because it's in division. Texans would make a lot of sense opposite Derek Stingley, but we know that's not going to happen. And aside from that, man, a place that I could potentially see is the Packers. We know they've had those issues with Jair Alexander on the field, off the field with that current coaching staff. So that could be somebody that they end up moving that we don't even think about. Jalen Ramsey would come in and be the leader of that defense. And they wouldn't have a drop off from Jair Alexander, obviously, to Jalen Ramsey. They'd actually upgrade a little bit at that position. So that's two places I could see him being. He hasn't been a lot of cold weather places, so maybe Green Bay is not his fit, but I think those are two spots that could work out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, nothing would make me happier than to see Jalen back in a Rams jersey. I'd love for him to finish out his career with the Rams, and I think we definitely need it. And I think there's still a lot of love there. Like he was saying that he still talks to McVay. McVay says he's still in touch with him, and how it ended, like he wanted to stay in LA, but at the end of the day, like he understood the business, and it's not like LA did him dirty. LA took less than what they could have for him to send him to his preferred destination, which was Miami, and we got back a third round pick, and we got back a tight end and Hunter Long that had as many NFL yards and touchdowns as me and you, and we haven't played. So it's not like I don't see that being an issue with him coming back, but I'm gonna go ahead and say the quiet part out loud for you, because I think the other landing spot that makes sense is the other team that happens to be in LA, the team that happens to rent SoFi Stadium, the Chargers. I think him and Derwin being friends makes a whole ton of sense. I think the two of them would go crazy in that defense together. Harbaugh likes these big, long corners, and there's not too many of them that can play physical and stuff like that. And with them moving on from Asante Samuel Jr., it makes sense to have a veteran presence in there as they try to shore up some of that secondary for the Chargers. So I think LA seems to be the destination. It's just going to be a question of if he's wearing horns or if he's wearing bolts in the offseason. But I agree with you. I don't think anything's going to happen officially until after June. So that way they can get a little bit of cap relief, because it is going to have to end up being a trade. I don't see a world where they cut him.
Yeah, absolutely not.
So we'll see what team is willing to give up the capital. All right. Last part. A lot of offseason narratives. We talked about this at the top. There's a lot of offseason narratives and this stuff, and we're not going to touch all of these offseason narratives, but there's just some stuff that, man, I want to get your feeling, man. Like, is this something that we really need to gas this narrative up, that there's a lot of juice behind this, or is this something that maybe we should hit the brakes on it? So I'll give you the topic. You let me know where you stand, and then I'll respond to that. So gas and brakes, man. The Chicago Bears, under new head coach Ben Johnson, will have a record above 500 and secure a playoff spot.
Man, I think I would hit the gas on that. And the reason I say that is the defense they had last year, especially as they closed the year out, they were playing well. They added a little bit to their defense. They fixed a lot of these glaring holes on offense. And if we're assuming that Ben Johnson can, call plays like he did in the Lions, right? I think that'll get them at least 9-8, right? That'll get them to that 9-8, 10-7 area. Now, I don't know if that'll be enough to compete for that division to win that division necessarily, but I think it'll put them in position to compete for it. Obviously, Detroit's still Detroit. We'll just have to see how they adjust without those coordinators. And then Minnesota, I don't think Minnesota's going to have a year like they had last year. I think they'll have a little bit of regression, but that's still a competitive team as well.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I want to hit the gas on this narrative. I know that we got to see it, right? That sometimes good coordinators are just good coordinators, and I know there's a part of me that would just love to see Ben Johnson fail, just for the simple fact that he's been so hyped for year after year after year, and I think it would just be hilarious if he got to the head coaching thing and he just couldn't play the guitar. But I really think that he has something to him, and I think when you watch the way that they drafted this year, he has a clear vision for fixing this offense and supporting Caleb. And we talked about it in both shows, in episode 1 and episode 2. The Chicago Bears have done everything this offseason to get as much support around Caleb Williams as possible and remove all of the excuses. It's really going to be on him to go out there and execute. But I definitely think that this is a team that they should have an above 500 record because they have a really, really solid defense. And I think that only gets better this year. I think the offense makes a huge step forward. I think Caleb, they're going to work on work on some of his mechanics, work on him feeling more comfortable. So he's not looking to run, he's looking to throw. And I also think that there is a chance that they can compete for a wild card spot. Like you said, it's going to be a tough division, but what remains to be seen about Detroit is what is the fallout going to look like once you lose both of your coordinators. That's not to say that they're going to go into the toilet, but that's going to be a thing. I don't think Minnesota is going to be as competitive this year because of what they got going on with the quarterback situation. Yeah, it's year 2 for JJ McCarthy, but it's technically year 1 because he didn't see any real on the field action outside the preseason. And then Green Bay continues to remain a mystery. I'm still not 100% sold on Jordan Love. He looked like he regressed last year based off of the previous year where he got the contract. I think he's a good quarterback. I just don't know if he's going to land where they thought he was going to be. So I like that gas on the Bears for this one.
Yeah, man.
Next one, it's in your division. We just touched on them. The renters of SoFi, the Chargers. Gas or brakes on them that they will dethrone the Kansas City Chiefs as AFC West champions this year.
Man, this is the toughest one, I think.
I know you like how I just discounted your Broncos from being the AFC West champions.
No, it's all good. I think there's gas on it, man. Realistically, like if you look at how that team is being built, and they've always played the Chiefs tough. The Broncos are playing the Chiefs tougher. The Raiders always play the Chiefs pretty tough, and the Chargers have been giving them a run for their money now. I think they could win the division. I think they have some issues when it comes to like Justin Herbert's shown he's not that clutch, closing time, etc. in the playoffs when they do make it, but I think they do have a chance to compete, man, for the AFC West title. And again, I got a Broncos hat on. I'm being non-biased. That roster's loaded, though, right? They have an absolutely loaded roster. They have one of my favorite coaches in the NFL. I hated that he went there, but it kind of makes sense why he went there. So I would actually hit gas on that one, unfortunately.
Yeah. Again, I'm gonna side with you, man. I'm gonna hit the gas on the Chargers, and everything in me, the hater in me, wants to hit the brake so hard on this. I want to hit the brake so hard on it. Because I would like, there's a part of me that's like, the Chargers are the Chargers until they're not. But lately for them, that's been in the playoffs, right? You talk about the way that this roster is constructed from the bottom up. Harbaugh has come in there and he's put his fingerprints all over this roster. He got the offensive line right. They have a pretty nasty offensive line. Justin Herbert, whether you like him, whether you love him, he is a very viable quarterback in the NFL. I think the running back room, getting Najee Harris, getting Omarion Hampton, right? Those are tough physical bruisers, and that's the style of football that Harbaugh likes to play. He's going to run it right up the gut, and he's going to pound the rock for 4 quarters, and you're going to have to out-endure his team. Now, I do think, like I said, they're going to need some help in the secondary. Derwin is good, but Derwin is getting a little long in the tooth. He's going to need some help from those corners as well. But I think they did enough with upgrading the wide receiver room this offseason. I think the addition of Trey Harris is going to play out massively for them. That's going to be probably that's going to be Herbert's new favorite target is going to be Trey Harris. So I think this is a team that's done everything the right way, that's coached by a really, really solid coach that brought all of his crew from Michigan. So the coordinators, we know what they're capable of. We know what they could do. And even though I think it's going to be a tightly contested division, I think they stand a real good chance of knocking off the Chiefs. And this is not an indictment on how good or how bad the Chiefs are. I just think that there's so much talent on the Chargers. The Chiefs are going to be hard-pressed to stay on top of that throne. But as we know, for the last few seasons, doesn't matter if they do it by a lot or they do it by a little. Andy and Pat just seem to always pull it out. But I like the narrative this year. I think the Chargers could end up taking the AFC West.
Yeah, and I honestly think that's going to be the tightest division race in the NFL this year. The Broncos, the Chargers, the Chiefs, all in that playoff race, man. And hopefully the Chiefs get knocked off, and hopefully it's about my Denver Broncos. But I could absolutely see the Chargers doing that, and absolutely can see the Raiders with Pete Carroll taking a step forward. Maybe not competing this year, but absolutely taking a big step forward and being competitive and winning more games.
All right. How about this one? I don't know if you happen to catch Sinners in theaters at all, but I saw it, and let me tell you something. If I was Josh Allen, I have to have a discussion with Haley when we get home. Like, I know it's just a movie, but now I'm watching you do this press tour and I'm seeing you kikiing and laughing and y'all smiling and stuff at each other. And based off of what I seen in that movie, I'm not convinced that something didn't happen when the cameras went off. Okay, I'm just saying. But I'm mentioning Josh Allen and I'm mentioning Sinners because everybody just seems like it's a foregone conclusion that the Bills are going to win the AFC East this year. Is that something that we should pump gas on or pump brakes on?
I mean, that's all gas. I don't know. Like right now, they have a hold on that division like the Patriots did at one point. I don't think the Patriots, while they'll be competitive, I don't think they're going to take a 10-win jump this year to be competing with the Bills, right? The Dolphins have a bunch of issues. Their defense hasn't really been tough. They've had some trouble with cold weather games, Tua's health, etc. I don't know how they're going to do. Now, them drafting Quinn Ewers late, I think he's a serviceable replacement for Tua, that late round pick that can develop into that and step into some games, but I don't think they're strong enough to overtake them. And then, so Dolphins, Patriots, and the Titans. You know, Titans have the number one
Giants.
Or Giants rather. Mm-hmm. No, it's not the Giants.
AFC Giants.
The Jets.
Oh yeah, Jets. Not the other New York team, the Jets.
The other New York team, Jets. And I don't think. And again, I think the Jets rebuilding, the Patriots rebuilding. I don't see them competing. The closest would be the Dolphins, and they've shown that they're not a tough team yet. So I don't really see. I think they're going to have a 3-game lead in that division, with probably New England being in second place because Mike Vrabel can coach his ass off and they'll have them competitive. But that's the closest team I think to them, and they're not that close.
This is the first one I'm gonna go opposite on you, bro. I'm gonna pump the brakes on the Bills just walking into the AFC. I think the Patriots are really poised to give them a fight this year, and I think Drake May, with a more stable head coach, a more established head coach, a reconstructed offensive line, some viable weapons over there, I think Drake May is going to take a significant leap. And I know I'm essentially saying, hey, a coach plus a leap in a quarterback is going to equate to 10 more wins. But I really, really think that they're going to do that. And not just because of how good I think the Patriots are going to be, but I think this situation to monitor in Buffalo with the James Cook was a big part of their offense last year. And you saw them kind of take some of the load off of Josh where he didn't have to put the cape on. They kind of ran that through James Cook. And that doesn't appear to be nearing any kind of resolution for the time being. I haven't heard any report that there are ongoing contract negotiations, that they're talking to. I just know that Cook he's not reported yet. And he doesn't plan on reporting until his contract is resolved. And do the Bills want to play chicken with this guy and say, oh, we can just dump anybody back there? Because they haven't had a viable running game in years. James Cook has been the best thing that's happened to that backfield in a long time. Like, outside of James Cook, the next best rusher on that team is Josh Allen. And that is the last thing that you want your quarterback to be. Also, Josh Allen kind of does this thing where I think we all agree how super talented he is. And you know, how much we love when he puts on the cape. But I think it's also dangerous that any team that requires their quarterback to put a cape on that often, like, I just don't see the consistency. And I don't think that they got better with their wide receiver room at all either. So I think that there's a real chance that team kind of takes a step back. The defense is going to be serviceable, but it's not going to be the same. I saw that they have a reunion with Trey White is back now, but they had what's his name retired, and then they moved off of Leonard Floyd had left last season. Von Miller is now, I think he's released, correct?
Yep, he's free.
Yeah. So it's not just going to be as easy as, hey, show up, we're going to walk into this like it has been the last few years. I think there's real contention there from the Patriots, and I also think that the Giants could quietly surprise if they could get halfway decent quarterback play, because I think that defense for them is going to be a real thing. The Dolphins, unfortunately, if you're a Dolphins fan, I don't know what you have to be excited about this year. I think that team is going to be awful. I think they're looking at the potential number 1, number 2 draft pick this year.
Yeah, and I would say to the running back point, man, you still got Nick Chubb as a free agent. I'd keep an eye on that there.
Yeah.
Still stalls. J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, Jamal Williams. I think they have enough people in free agency at the running back position that they could step in. And while it might not be James Cook how he is right now, Nick Chubb, if he's another year removed from that injury, has proven to be serviceable. Jamal Williams has been, proven to be a short down back that can get you first downs and get you touchdowns. And J.K. Dobbins, as long as he stays healthy again, he's only 26, right?
Mm-hmm.
He'll finish this season. He'll be 26 years old still. We're going into 27 years old, and he's had some good years. He had a good year with the Chargers until he started slowing down and got a little bit hurt at the end of the year. But I think there's enough free agent running backs, and they did enough in that draft, man, to kind of double down on their defense. They added Joey Bosa. I think that's an upgrade over Von Miller at this point. They're both going to miss games. Joey
Yeah,
Bosa,
I'm about to say, assuming that either one of them is available.
They both have been missing games, but like having Joey Bosa as a straight pass rusher, which with that D line, that's one of the best D line rooms in the NFL. I don't think, and even the receiving thing, man, they like their receiving room more than everybody else does. Josh Allen balled out last year with the receiving room they have. They got another year together with them, so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt until somebody takes that crown from them.
Fair enough. All right, this one. I'm interested to see where you're going to land on this, because I know both of us were big supporters of this guy while he was in college, but we're not in college anymore, right? We're not in Kansas anymore, right? Shedeur Sanders becoming the starting quarterback for the Browns this year.
Gas, man. And I would say this because I would bet almost any amount of money he'll start at least one game. And I'll say that because Joe Flacco is the best quarterback they have. And at this stage of his career, Joe Flacco can get you through a few games, 2, 3, 4. But we kind of saw what happened in Indianapolis when they turned it over to him, etc. Like he was coming in, he started playing hot, and then he fell off after 4 games. And that's a professional. That's a good person for Shedeur to learn behind. But that quarterback room is right for the taking. So if Shedeur goes there, puts in the work, man. They really have some good weapons there. I think he has a good opportunity to learn that offense behind a good offensive line. They have a good defense. They have a phenomenal play caller on offense, in my opinion. I think as long as he learns the things he needs to learn, I would imagine he's going to start some games this year. I don't think he'll be the week 1 starter, but I could see him by the end of the season, last half of the season, depending on where their bye lanes, if they have a late bye starting after that. I could 100% see that. I'm all gas on this one.
Yeah, I want to be gas on this one. I really do. But I'm going to pump brakes on it. I'm not pumping hard brakes on it, but it's, reluctant brakes on it. Just for the simple fact that, like, this is not a shot at Shedeur. But they took Shedeur in the 5th, and they took Dillon Gabriel, I think, in the 3rd?
The 3rd round, yeah.
In the 3rd. I don't – unless one, he gets injured, right? Or he's just so horrendous on the field. I don't think you take a quarterback in the 3rd and then you turn around and take another guy in the 5th with the intention of the guy in the 5th becoming the starter. Like, I just don't see a world where that is. And I would love to tell you that the best player is going to see the field, period. You and I both know that that's how it's supposed to work. That's not how it always works. And it's not that I think that Dillon Gabriel is a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. But I just have a hard time believing that you're going to invest that kind of draft capital in somebody without the intention of them being the starter quarterback. And even if he gets on the field, right, I think even if Dillon Gabriel gets on the field, he starts as a starting quarterback and it's not that pretty. If it's not that pretty, I still think they stick with him because Stefanski has been known to stick with people, even though it's an unpopular opinion. He's been known to stick with them and let it ride it out. And he'll probably play the card like, hey, he's a rookie. He's learning the system and stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong. You're going to get pressure from the media. You're going to get pressure from the fans to put Shedeur in there, right, because he's the bigger name. He's the bigger brand. But I think this draft showed either, one, people just really don't like the Sanders family, or 2, maybe the football guys know something that the rest of us don't. And that when it comes to football, right, maybe Shedeur isn't as good as the rest of us think that he is. I'm not saying these are my opinions. I'm just saying I don't see a world where he's the starting quarterback for the Browns this year, barring like injury to Flacco and Dillon Gabriel. I think that's the way it happens, not him beating them out.
I completely get that argument. I just think back to Russell Wilson beating out Matt Flynn, right? They paid Matt Flynn all this money, but they had a pure quarterback competition, and the better player started that year and ended up making the Pro Bowl, as a matter of fact, as a rookie. I'm not saying that Shedeur is going to make a Pro Bowl, but Dillon Gabriel isn't better. I think some teams had him on their board higher because of maybe some of Shedeur Sanders' interviews that were reported, etc. Maybe the thing with the spotlight, like teams don't love a backup that has more spotlight than the star, like Cam Newton, Tim Tebow for a while. I think Shador Sanders, if you draft somebody after the third round, really the third round after the quarterback position, you're really looking at them as a backup that could turn into a starter or just a pure backup. But I think he fell not because of talent. I think he fell because of some of those interviews based on all the reporting. So if he puts his head down, gets to work, there's no reason he can't beat out Dylan Gabriel. Joe Flacco will be harder to beat out. He's a savvy vet, knows offense, knows the lingo, knows how to run a quarterback room. But aside from that, man, I really do think he has a chance. I think he'll go into the season as a number 2 quarterback.
I mean, look, I think that's what I would like to see. I'm pretty sure that's what a good majority of the Browns fan base would like to see. But, that's why we got to play the game. We got to let it play out. All right. Only got 2 more for you, Mike. This one, I know this one is kind of wild, but it's a certain individual who we both know who's been talking loud in my ear. And because he's plugged into these things, it just keeps coming across my timeline. So I find all the media and all the stuff for it. So I'm going to present it to you for your review. The Commanders overtake the Eagles for the division in the NFC East.
I'm gonna slam on the brakes like I'm coming up to a traffic stop or like I'm coming up to a traffic jam rather. The Eagles, man, this is the thing. The Eagles, I do think the Commanders will make the playoffs. I think they're moving in a direction, and that division hasn't had too many repeat winners besides the Eagles winning it. They had like a 10, 15-year period of time where the division winner was the same, different every year. There's a big gap between the Eagles and everybody else, and there's a big gap between Washington, the Giants, and the Cowboys, in my opinion, right? So I think they'll be competitive. I think I could see them splitting the season series with them. But how the Giants are built, man, the offensive line is still that offensive line. Their defensive line is still nasty, right? They still have the coordinators they had last year.
Minus Kellen Moore.
Minus Kellen Moore, who is down in Dallas, but
Kellen is Saints.
New Orleans. I'm sorry. He was in Dallas and then went up to the Eagles and Saints now. But I could really see them until somebody comes and snatches their crown again. It might sound a little bit different with the Chiefs because we've seen the last few years, teams starting to chip away and get close some of that ground. We have not seen that really with the Eagles. The Eagles thoroughly beat the Commanders when it mattered the most. And Jaden Daniels, there is potential – for that second-year slump, right? That happens to some quarterbacks, and he has such a phenomenal first year. If he does repeat that, they have a really good chance. But there's a whole year of film on him now, right? Teams will know how to game plan against him a little bit better. I'm going to hit the brakes on that one.
Yeah, man, I'm going with you on that one. I'm Fred Flintstone, foot through the bottom of the car, into the pavement, into the asphalt, sparks and stuff shooting off of it as I'm trying to stop this vehicle. There's no way. There's just no way. And I know it's going to hurt some Commanders fans' feelings because they're like, well, we beat them in their house last year against Kenny Pickett. And by the way, you beat them because Devontae Smith dropped a ball because he wanted to run before he looked at him, but he had it. It was a very catchable ball, good ball from Kenny Pickett. He catches that and he goes down. That's it. That's the game. It's over. So I don't think that's going to happen again. Also, I think when it comes to trench warfare, nobody does it better currently in the NFL than the Eagles and Howie Roseman. 100%. Their trenches on both sides of the ball, the offensive and defensive lines, you are going to be in for a long, long day. And the defense for the Eagles did not get worse this offseason. You think, oh, well, they offloaded Josh Sweat. I don't think the Eagles care. I don't think they care. They just restocked with Jihad Campbell. They really don't care. I think the secondary is only going to get better, right? Cooper DeJean, you're going to see him in his second year continue to ascend and make a leap. And Jalen Hurts, I think Jalen Hurts is going to get better. I think you're reaching the end of what's his name? Brown's contract.
Yeah, AJ Brown.
You're reaching the end of his contract, but I feel like he's still got a lot of good ball left in him. Devontae Smith is still a dog. We don't know what's going to happen with Dallas Goedert, but I think he's viable. But I think the most important piece, besides the lines that we talked about, is still intact and showed that he still has a lot of tread on the tires, and that's Saquon. Saquon showed you guys last year that he is the best running back in the league, especially when you give him an offensive line to work with. And his ability to create after contact, it is like nothing that we've seen in the league in a very, very long time. I just don't, even with Kellen Moore going to, the NFC South, I don't see the drop off being that significant, especially when the game plan now is run the ball.
Yeah, and a side note, this is a little off topic, but it has to do with the Eagles. Did any of us thought Kenny Pickett would be a Super Bowl champion before Dak Prescott? Just throwing that out there, right? The backup quarterback.
I never saw that. But here's the thing: if you had told me to gamble on it, just for the simple fact that Kenny Pickett wasn't on the Dallas Cowboys, I would have picked the odds for him to get it, just because the Cowboys don't know how to even get to the Super Bowl post salary cap era.
Yeah, my bad, Cowboys fans. I had to throw a jab, but interesting.
Yeah, I'm not apologizing for that at all. All right. This topic has the potential to make me a very, very happy man or a very, very sad man, depending on how it breaks and who they would potentially get to replace him. But gas and brakes on the narrative that Kyle Shanahan is in the hot seat this year.
Breaks, man. That's a guy. Again, they dealt with a lot of injuries last year. Hufanga,
Greenlaw,
McCaffrey,
CMC,
Brandon Ayuk. They
Williams.
Like they dealt with a lot of injuries. And him and John Lynch is probably one of the best GM coach pairings, man. So they definitely know how to build a team together. I think they'll be confident. I think they'll be confident this year. This year could be a little bit of a reset for them. They got rid of some of those contracts so they can pay Purdy. That'll probably be done by training camp. You don't know yet, but usually that's about the time that they get some of that stuff done. They did free up some money with that George Kittle deal. So they'll be able to add to that running back room to have some more depth in case Christian McCaffrey doesn't come back 100%. So I think breaks, man. Like, I know you would be happy if he's out of there, but he would have a job the week after he got fired, realistically. And I don't see John Lynch firing that man at all, unless it's at ownership's discretion. And the ownership has been very stable. They give people time, generally speaking. They've been real patient with Kyle Shanahan. And the reality is you would rather take what he's done the last 10 years in a lot of different teams. I know there's owners that would pay like Shad Khan, right, down in Jacksonville, would absolutely want the seasons that the 49ers have had the last 10 years or what Jacksonville's had. I don't think he's going anywhere. Just like the Mike Tomlin conversation that happens every year, he's not going anywhere until he wants to.
Yeah, man. Listen, as a Rams fan, I would love to see him get the heck up out of our division. But I think this actually has some gas to it. I'm gonna put the gas on it as opposed to putting the brakes. I think he is in the hot seat, and keep in mind, I don't think that Kyle Shanahan being in the hot seat has necessarily to do solely with his coaching, because I think you and I both agree he's one of the better coaches in the NFL, especially when it comes to offensive game plans and stuff like that. But I think if he were to get terminated, this would come directly from ownership. And yes, they have had some really, really good seasons, barring last season, right? That was just injury after injury after injury. I think the problem was, right, that they doubled and tripled down on paying some people that they probably should not have paid. And when you put all of this money in, right, and you're pushing your chips towards the center of the table, you have to come away with something. And I think I get it. Injuries are the one thing that nobody can predict, but the NFL is a bottom line business at the end of the day. There's not a lot of empathy and understanding for stuff like, hey, you guys went and spent, and not only did you spend excessively on pieces that couldn't play for us last year. And we continue to pay people, and we're paying top of the market deals for all of our players, premium deals, and we don't have anything to show for it. And the fact that we've been as close as we've been in several different seasons, right? You're talking about 2 Super Bowl appearances and 1 NFC championship appearance. No, 2 NFC championship appearances. They're on the losing end of all of those. And at a certain point, I get it. You're like, well, who are you going to get to come in and replace it? Some of these owners don't think like that. Like, oh, who am I going to get that's going to come in and do better? Some of them is just like, you know what? We need something fresh because this clearly isn't working. Like, this guy is good. Everybody knows that he's good, but can he get us over the hump? It doesn't seem so. So I know it sounds like it's the Rams bias talking, but I've heard enough stuff from actual 49ers fans, following people that cover the team and things of that nature, engaging in conversation. There's a good majority of the 49ers fan base that would be okay if Kyle were to be, out of the organization, because I think some of them have actually grown tired with some of his perceived decision making about, giving certain players play time or not giving players play time, or maybe holding on to players way longer than what they should. I think a large part of this too stemmed from the Brandon Ayuk saga last summer, where Ayuk was getting on any platform that would listen to him. He was leveraging on his NFL friends and stuff like that, saying, hey, I'm good. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. He's teasing like Steelers. He's teasing Commanders and stuff like that. And he really kind of had the 49ers kind of crawl back to him. And then when he got on there, he wasn't himself. Then he ended up getting injured, unfortunately. And then Debo, right? Debo, just the year prior, they had paid a bunch of money, and Debo looked horrendous this year. I think the only person that's quasi worth the money that they paid him is Nick Bosa, and I would argue even Nick Bosa had a step back this year. And I don't know if that's just because, hey, he doesn't have all the support that he was typically used to having, because Dre was hurt. Fred Warner played the entire season dang near hurt, right? Like I think there's two things can be true at the same time. That yes, there are legitimate football reasons why this team has not achieve the things that they set out to achieve. But I also think that there's a narrative where those things also don't matter. And this guy could really lose his job. We've seen coaches lose their job. We've seen winning coaches lose their jobs before.
Yeah, and I agree with that sentiment of we see that. Here's the thing though, Robert Saleh's back. That's the best defense they've ever had when they had Robert Saleh. He's back in that division. So even though they lost some of those pieces on defense, I guarantee their defense is going to be better this year than it was last year if they have a relative amount of health. If they get Christian McCaffrey back to 80%, even if Christian McCaffrey isn't 100% of what he was, right? If he's 80% of what he was, he's still a top 5 back in the NFL. Pearsall, they see a lot of potential in Pearsall. Obviously they just re-signed Kittle. So I feel like they have enough to work with, and they have 2 coaches that are very experienced on both sides of the ball. They have a GM that does a really good job of adding pieces around them. And if Brock Purdy takes a team-friendly deal, we'll see a team-friendly, like not over 50 million, like 40 million.
It's going to be over 50.
Well, I mean, we'll see, right? Because he could take that 40 million, 45. That'll give them some more room to work with and add some pieces to that room. They did draft a receiver, right? They did a few things. And Shanahan has shown on the offensive side to be able to deal people, but the fans are a little hasty sometimes, like, get this person out of here. I'm telling you, like, you replace him, you're like, yeah, he's gone, and then who, right? You look at Seattle wanting to get Pete Carroll out of there. They got McDonald in there. He didn't have the year that they wanted to have, right? The Steelers are one of the only franchises that has a little bit of that continuity. But a lot of times, man, you got a winning coach that has proved that he can win in the league consistently. You don't really get better after you get rid of that guy, especially immediately. I don't know, man. So again, there's a potential. 20 to 25% of the league gets fired every year. Mm-hmm. He could be up this year. There's some impatient ownership a lot of times, but he has a very patient owner, very patient GM. They build rosters very well. So I think they have an understanding this year that, hey, we had to cut off some of their salary, right, and potentially not re-sign some guys, potentially cut some guys to kind of rebuild this roster. So I don't think they think they're going to go in there and win a Super Bowl this year necessarily. Every team has that goal. But if you put Shanahan and Lynch and that ownership up to a lie detector test, they're probably not expecting that. But I bet you they're expecting to be competitive. And I think with Robert Saleh on the defensive end, having Mike Shanahan or Kyle Shanahan rather call the offense, they're going to be at minimum competitive.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I said, we'll find out when the season opens up here in a few months, and we'll see how things play out. But in the meantime, in between time, man, we appreciate y'all tuning in to the 3rd episode of the In the Pocket Podcast. Just a reminder, In the Pocket Podcast is available on YouTube, dropping every single Monday. So please don't get caught outside the pocket. go ahead and hit that like button, comment, subscribe. Help us grow the channel, man. Help us, build this into something bigger than what it is right now. But, we'll be back next week with fresh content. So for myself, for Mike, we appreciate y'all. We love y'all. Be good.